And good morning, class. So for today, we'll be discussing topic two. As you can see from the title, it's the root source. So when you think of roots, so obviously we think of plants and how they get the nutrients from the soil. So for today, we'll be looking at those nutrients. So most of the raw materials plants need are found in the soil. And it's amazing how they get those nutrients and how they get water. I remember I remember when I was discussing this. I used to show an illustration of a capillary. So basically, this obviously is not a very thin capillary. So like if you will go to a blood bank, they will poke you and then get a small amount of blood. They're not suctioning it, but somehow the blood goes up through that small piece of glass tube, right? So if you think about it, the principle is this, and you will understand this when you go to your physics class in high school. But the thinner the tube, the higher the liquid will go. So same thing with plants, right? So the thinner the thinner the tube, the thinner the capillary, the higher the water will go, and that's how plants, um, especially tall trees, get their water from the ground. So how does this affect us? Think about it, right? What do we put in? What what are the things that we put in our soil, right? So whatever they will get, eventually we will get also, right? So what do plants need to be healthy? Okay, you can pause the video, do your research. Yeah, you can pause the video now and do your research. And yeah, you probably heard about it. Fertilizers. Yeah. Okay. So nitrogen. We'll start with nitrogen. So we'll be looking at the essential elements that are needed by plants. Start with nitrogen, used in creation of proteins and nucleic acid. So, um, when you pee, especially for the boys, because boys are more inclined into eating proteins and those things. So when they pee, somehow their pee smells like more like ammonia, and which which is like the main component will be nitrogen. Okay, so those people who are into meat, uh, nuts and those things, then yeah, so they will get more protein. Okay, so when you pee, if the color is yellow, it's either you have way too much vitamin C, or you have way too much protein, or you're dehydrated. It's needed for stem and leaf growth, chlorophyll production. Yeah, so the more the nitrogen, the greener the plant will be, and that's why they use nitrogen mostly for uh, um, vegetables and those things, because they need to be leafy, right? Okay, so air has 78% free nitrogen, cannot be used by plants not in the correct form. So the thing is, when you inhale, you are taking in 78% nitrogen, but your body will not be able to utilize it. It will just be flushed out of your system, because the nitrogen that is present in the atmosphere is inert, meaning it will not react with your body. So how do we utilize the nitrogen from the atmosphere then? How do plants get nitrogen? Okay, so we have nitrogen fixation. So basically, this will be uh, a process of using an inert form of nitrogen into a usable form. So changing free nitrogen into a form that can be used by plants. So done by certain types of bacteria. So you have, and that's why we have this thing we call nitrogen fixing bacteria. So the nitrogen fixing bacteria is no like those bacteria are the ones that changes the form of nitrogen in order for plants to be able to use them. Found in nodules of legumes. So now, if you can just type this, copy this, watch this, because I can't show the video here, but if you have time, just type it, copy it, and watch the video. Okay, so now, and nitrogen, and one of the like major contributors of like for changing um, inert nitrogen to a usable form will be lightning. So because of lightning, somehow it changes the form of N2 into a usable form. Okay. So nitrogen cycle. So how else can nitrogen get into the soil? So you have nitrogen in the atmosphere, um, and then that nitrogen will be used by nitrogen fixing bacteria. Okay, and then obviously after they fix it, it will be usable for plants, and then the plants will use it. Animals will. Okay, so we're looking at the cycle. Animals will eat the plants, and then when they poop, they will um, they will excrete the nitrogen, and then there are bacteria that will change the nitrogen into inert nitrogen. So the cycle continues. I don't know if you get it. Okay, we'll start with inert nitrogen, and then the bacteria will change it to usable form, and then the plants will use it. Okay, and then the plants will be obviously eaten by animals, and then the animals will excrete them, and then the nitrogen present in their waste will now be converted to inert nitrogen, and that's it. Okay, next one. Too little nitrogen in the soil, and then you will have this. So yellowish, brownish plants, poor or little growth. Okay, yellow in color or brownish in color. So too much nitrogen in the soil can damage organisms. Okay, burns or browning coloring. So we have peace lily, and somehow the leaves of our peace lily now, like the tip turns to brown. Obviously, if you have too much nitrogen, you have fewer flowers. So I'm guessing they don't use a lot of nitrogen when they're trying to produce as many flowers as they want, right? Like and roses, tulips, and those things. Phosphorus, another macro element. Phosphorus composition of nucleic acid. Okay, root and flower growth, reproduction. So it is important. So most likely, those who are shedding flowers will be using this. Too little phosphorus in the soil, plants have poor or little growth. Stem may turn purple. Leaves may have a blue-gray color. Too much phosphorus in the soil prevents plants from absorbing other micronutrients. Um, so that's why there should be a delicate balance between a certain amount. And I will show you later why those who are selling fertilizers, they have different formulation depending on the need. Leads to deficiencies in other areas. So imagine if you're using too much phosphorus, then you're limiting the amount of absorption for other micronutrients. Okay, so how can deficiencies be corrected? By adding fertilizers. So fertilizers are substances that enriches soil with specific nutrients to improve plant growth. So say for example, you're planting trees and you want more fruits. Okay, so what will you add? If you're supplying flower shops, what will you add, right? So what are the elements that you will add? And that's why you need fertilizers, and that's why knowledge of environmental chemistry is very important. So are described by the major nutrient elements. They contain NPK, some may contain S, so for sulfur. So when you see NPK, so basically that's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So for fertilizers, you will see three numbers, three or four, depending on whether they contain sulfur or not. So three numbers. The first one is for nitrogen. The second one is for phosphorus. The third one will be for potassium, and then the fourth one will be for sulfur. Now, first one will be 21% nitrogen. So for this example, 21% nitrogen, NPK, right? 21 nitrogen, 3% phosphorus, and then 20% potassium. Okay. And the next one, so NPK, 22% nitrogen. Does this contain phosphorus? Looking at the number here, no phosphorus here, and then 15% potassium. Another one, 13, 13, 13. So obviously you have equal percentage or amounts of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And another one, 20, 27, and 5. So as you can see here, it's very rare for you to have sulfur as part of the components. But there are cases wherein you will see four numbers, and then the fourth number will be for sulfur. Okay. Um, Next, negative consequences of fertilizers. If fertilizers enter the water sources, it may damage those ecosystems by changing the concentration of chemicals. And that's the thing, right? Uh, a, if you increase a certain amount of a certain element, then that will create, maybe all of a sudden a bloom or sudden growth of maybe plants that we don't need, right? And one example would be this. Oh well, how do they get into our waters? When we apply fertilizers on our, let's say, lawn, and then all of a sudden there's heavy rain, and then rain will go through the sewer going straight to the rivers and lakes. Now we have excessive amounts of fertilizer present there. So initial increase in plant growth, algal bloom, so what we call eutrophication. So you will see here, those green things that are floating, those are algal bloom produced by way too much fertilizers present um, in rivers and lakes. So the problem is, since they are floating, they will block the sunlight, which will kill the other plants, right? Near the plants below them. So when you kill the plants below you, okay, those plants will now be decomposed by bacteria, and then the bacteria will be requiring oxygen. And when they use the oxygen, okay, there will not be enough oxygen for the fish. Does that make sense? Now, if you don't get that part, you can just rewind it just a little, right? So algae overpopulate and die, becomes food for decomposers. Now the bacteria, which are the decomposers, will use up the oxygen, and now we have a problem. Okay, leads to decrease in dissolved oxygen in water, and fewer species can survive. Final product: few or no consumers left in water. Now you have a dead zone. Okay, and that's why you have a lot of fish kill. Okay, so eutrophication. So you see here again, fertilizers will be introduced here, and then now you have algal bloom. So algae will bloom, so they will now block here. They will float here on the surface here, and then they will kill the plants below them, and they can also die eventually. And now the bacteria will try to decompose them. The bacteria now will use oxygen, and obviously will not leave oxygen for the fish. Okay, so a picture here of how much damage it can cause. So this can go for miles. You see all of the dead fish here. These can go for miles and miles of dead fish, okay, which can be food for a lot of people, especially in countries that are struggling. Nitrogen waste. Nitrogen waste from cattle feedlot enters nearby lake. A biologist plots the following graph of the population size of algae and fish in the lake over time. At point X, the biologist starts to measure the level of dissolved oxygen in the lake. So you will see here. So algae, as the amount of algae grows, okay, solid line, the number of fish goes down. Okay. Now, which of the following graph shows dissolved oxygen concentration that the biologists measured in the lake? Okay. So now this question is a little difficult, but we need to make the connection. When the when this goes up, algal bloom goes up, the algae bloom goes up, the population of fish goes down, which means that um, you have less and less and less oxygen. So in this case, the dissolved oxygen, the answer for this one would be letter C, because the decrease in oxygen also would mean the decrease in the population size of fish. And hopefully you learned something today. And I'll be meeting you soon. I'll be scheduling a Zoom meeting for each class. And God bless you all. Happy Monday.